Dad, you're embarrassing. Don't come to Christmas dinner. 8 words that cost my daughter $48,000 and flipped her world upside down. My daughter, the kid I raised alone for 29 years, kicked me out of Christmas dinner because I embarrassed her fake rich in laws. She wanted to impress them with a perfect family image. So I smiled, said, "Of course, sweetheart," and quietly drove home. Want to know what happens when a con man's wife tries to con her own father? Here's what she didn't know. While she was forging my signature and stealing my money, I was digging into exactly who she married: a professional scam artist who targets wealthy families and drains them dry. Wrong guy to mess with. I'm Tom Mitchell, 61 years old, built a construction empire with these hands, and I just taught my daughter the most expensive lesson of her life. Ever been backstabbed by family? Hit subscribe and drop a comment about the worst betrayal you've seen. What I found out about my son-in-law will make your skin crawl. This isn't about Christmas dinner. This is about what happens when you try to play the man who built everything you have. When I was done, their fairy tale life wasn't worth a damn thing. 3 days before this Christmas morning disaster, I was the generous father, the provider, the man who'd raised his daughter single-handed after cancer took my wife when Victoria was 16. I'd built Mitchell Construction from nothing into a business I'm worth $2.8 million. Every dollar earned with calloused hands and an aching back. Victoria, she went by Vicky now, claimed it sounded more sophisticated, had married Bradley Pemberton 2 years ago. Old Boston money, she told everyone. Investment banking. The kind of family that summered in Martha's Vineyard and wintered in Aspen. I'd paid for their $180,000 wedding without blinking. What's money compared to your daughter's happiness? That Tuesday, December 15th, I was finalizing the Christmas surprise. A Mediterranean cruise for the whole extended family. Vicky, Brad, his parents, my sister's kids, everyone. 12 people, 2 weeks, luxury suite accommodations. The kind of vacation that creates memories for decades. Princess Cruise Lines, this is Janet Foster speaking. Janet, this is Tom Mitchell. I'm confirming the final head count for the Christmas sailing. Of course, Mr. Mitchell, the Emerald Princess departing December 26th. 12 passengers, total cost $48,300, all paid in full. I smiled, picturing Vicky's face when she opened the envelope Christmas morning. She'd been dropping hints about wanting to travel more, especially somewhere that would impress the Pemberton family. This would do it. Actually, Janet, I need to add one detail to the manifest. Could you include my name as the primary contact for any changes or cancellations? Absolutely, sir. Only the primary contact can modify bookings within 72 hours of departure, per company policy. Perfect. I wanted everything locked down tight. No last-minute confusion or family squabbles about arrangements. That evening, I drove to Vicky's house in Westwood, the house I'd helped with the down payment, naturally. I was planning to give her the cruise documents early, let her share the excitement with Brad. Maybe we could all have dinner, talk about the itinerary. I rang the doorbell at 7:45 p.m. exactly. I've always been punctual, a habit from 30 years running construction crews. But the call I received an hour later would change everything I thought I knew about my daughter. Beat 2, 900 words. Dad, we need to talk. Vicky's voice carried that tone, the one she'd perfected in her teenage years when she wanted something, but this felt different, felt colder. Of course, sweetheart, what's on your mind? It's about Christmas dinner. The thing is, well, Brad's parents are coming. They're very traditional people, very proper. I waited. In construction, you learn to let people finish their sentences before you start swinging hammers. The thing is, Dad, you're just, well, you can be embarrassing sometimes. The way you tell those work stories, and your hands are always dirty, and you talk so loud. Brad's parents are sophisticated people from a different world. The words hit like a sledgehammer to the chest. Embarrassing. After 29 years of single parenthood, after every sacrifice, every missed date, every weekend spent at her soccer games instead of fishing trips with the guys. So, what exactly are you saying, Victoria? I'm saying maybe it would be better if you didn't come to Christmas dinner this year. I know it sounds harsh, but it's important to Brad that his parents think well of me, of us. I sat in my truck outside her house, phone pressed to my ear, watching the warm light spill from her living room windows. The house I'd helped her buy, the life I'd helped her build. You're disinviting me from Christmas. Don't be so dramatic. It's just one meal. We can celebrate later, just the three of us. Maybe New Year's or something. And the cruise I booked for all of us? There was a pause. Too long a pause. What cruise? The Christmas cruise. $48,000, 12 people. I was going to surprise you tonight. Another pause, then, oh, Dad, that's so generous. But maybe we could do something smaller? Brad's parents might find it a bit much. Something in her voice didn't ring true. A construction worker learns to read people, contractors who might skip out, clients who might not pay, suppliers who promise delivery dates they can't meet. Vicky was lying about something. I see. Well, I suppose I should call Princess Cruise Lines tomorrow and make some adjustments. Yes, that sounds perfect. Thanks for understanding, Dad. You know I love you, right? Love. She said it like people say, have a nice day. To cashiers. I hung up and sat in that truck for 20 minutes. Engine running, heater blasting. Embarrassing. The word echoed in my mind. The man who'd worked 16-hour days to pay for her college. The father who'd learned to braid hair and paint fingernails because she didn't have a mother to teach her. But curiosity killed more than cats. And I've always been a curious man. The next morning, I called my business attorney, Danny Rodriguez. Danny and I went back 15 years. He'd handled the incorporation of Mitchell Construction, helped me navigate the legal maze of running a business. More importantly, he was the kind of lawyer who asked the right questions. Tom, good to hear from you. What's going on? Danny, I need you to run a financial background check on someone. Brad Pemberton, my son-in-law. Any particular reason? Call it intuition. Something's not adding up. Give me his full name and date of birth. I'll have something for you by Friday. Danny was thorough. When he called back 3 days later, his voice carried a weight I'd never heard before. Tom, we need to meet in person. Can you come to my office this afternoon? That bad? Let's just say your intuition was right on target. I drove to Danny's office that Friday afternoon with a knot in my stomach. In 30 years of business, I'd learned to trust that knot. It had saved me from bad partnerships, crooked suppliers, and foundation problems that could have cost millions. But I wasn't prepared for what Danny had discovered, and I definitely wasn't prepared for the phone call that would come that evening, the call that would set everything in motion. Beat 3, 720 words. Danny's office overlooked downtown Los Angeles, 30 stories up. He'd done well for himself since law school, and his success showed in every leather-bound book and mahogany surface. But his expression was grim as he spread documents across his desk. Tom, before we start, I need to ask you something. How well do you know Brad's financial situation? He works for Goldman Sachs, investment banking. Vicky says he makes good money. Used to work for Goldman Sachs. He was terminated on November 28th, 2 weeks ago. The knot in my stomach tightened. Terminated for what? Internal investigation into unauthorized trading activities. No criminal charges filed, but he's blacklisted from major financial firms. Danny slid another document across the desk. This is Brad's credit report. $47,000 in credit card debt. Car loans 60 days behind. And this. He handed me a formal-looking letter. Foreclosure notice. The Pemberton family home in Boston, the one Vicky always talked about with such reverence, was being seized by the bank. The Pembertons lost everything in 2008, Tom. They've been living on credit and family connections ever since. Brad's parents haven't had real money in 15 years. I stared at the documents, pieces clicking together like blueprints. The expensive tastes, the name-dropping, the desperate need to impress others with wealth they didn't have. There's more, Danny continued. I pulled some banking records for your daughter's accounts. With her permission, of course. She signed some paperwork a few months ago authorizing you as an emergency contact. What kind of paperwork? That's what's interesting. She signed forms adding Brad to all her accounts, including the trust fund you established for her college. But she also signed something else. He handed me a bank statement. 3 unauthorized withdrawals from my business account, totaling $8,350, all signed with what looked like my signature. Someone's been forging your name, Tom, and the handwriting analysis suggests it wasn't Brad. The room felt smaller suddenly. Hot. 30 years of building trust with my daughter, and she'd been stealing from me. How long has this been going on? Based on the bank records? At least 6 months, maybe longer. I drove home that evening with my mind racing. The cruise, the Christmas disinvitation, Brad's unemployed status, the forged signatures. It all painted a picture I didn't want to see. At 9:15 p.m., my phone rang. Vicky. Hi, Dad. I was thinking about the cruise situation. Maybe we could work something out after all. Oh, what changed your mind? Well, Brad talked to his parents and they think it might be fun. You know, getting to know you better. Of course they did. Now that Brad was unemployed and they were facing foreclosure, a $48,000 vacation suddenly seemed appealing. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so glad they're warming up to the idea. There's just one thing, though. Could you maybe tone it down a little? You know, try to fit in better? Brad's parents are really important to us right now. Important. Because they needed to maintain the illusion of wealth, even as their world collapsed around them. Of course, Vicky. I'll do whatever it takes to make this cruise perfect for everyone. Thanks, Dad. You're the best. After she hung up, I sat in my kitchen for an hour staring at Danny's evidence folder. The woman I'd raised, the daughter I'd sacrificed everything for, had been systematically stealing from me while planning to exclude me from her life. But I wasn't angry yet. Anger would come later. Right now, I was curious. How deep did this deception go? How long had they been planning to use me as their personal bank account? I opened my laptop and started researching. Princess Cruise Line's policies, wire transfer procedures, California recording laws. If Vicky and Brad wanted to play games with my money, they'd better understand who they were playing with. And that's when I discovered the real reason they needed that cruise so desperately. Beat 4, 900 words. The internet is a wonderful tool when you know how to use it. 30 years of running a construction business teaches you to research everything. Suppliers, contractors, building codes, safety regulations. The same skills work for researching people. I started with Brad Pemberton's LinkedIn profile. Last updated 6 months ago, still claiming employment at Goldman Sachs. No mention of the termination Danny had uncovered. The photo showed him in an expensive suit, standing in what looked like a corporate office. But LinkedIn profiles can lie. Corporate directories don't. Goldman Sachs. Employee directory, search Bradley Pemberton. No results found. I tried a different approach. Boston social media. The kind of websites where old money families announce their charity galas and society events. The Pembertons used to be fixtures in these circles, apparently, but the last mention of Brad's parents was from 2019, a charity auction where they donated a weekend at their family compound. The same compound now facing foreclosure. I dug deeper. Property records, tax liens, court documents. The Pemberton family had been hemorrhaging money for over a decade. First, the 2008 financial crisis wiped out their investments. Then a series of bad business decisions. Then the medical bills when Brad's father had a heart attack in 2021. By 2023, they were living entirely on credit, maintaining their social facade while drowning in debt. That's when I found the other families. A Google search for Bradley Pemberton engagement revealed something interesting. Before Vicky, Brad had been engaged to 2 other women from wealthy families. Jessica Whitmore, daughter of a Texas oil executive. Engagement lasted 8 months, ended abruptly when her father discovered Brad's financial situation. Before Jessica, there was Amanda Chen, whose family owned a chain of luxury hotels. That engagement lasted 6 months before Amanda's mother hired a private investigator. A pattern was emerging. Brad targeted women from wealthy families, gained access to their finances, then moved on when discovered. The classic con man approach. But with Vicky, something had changed. They'd actually gotten married, which meant either he'd found a perfect mark or the stakes were higher than with previous targets. I called Danny. I need you to research something else. How much access does Brad have to Vicky's accounts now that they're married? In California, pretty much unlimited access to anything she acquired after the marriage. Why? What about things she owned before, like the trust fund? That depends on how the trust was structured. Do you have the original documents? I did. I'd kept copies of everything in my home safe. The trust I'd established when Vicky turned 21, designed to mature when she turned 30. She'd have access to the principal in 6 months, $420,000, plus accumulated interest. Danny, I'm sending you the trust documents. I need to know exactly what Brad can and can't touch. I'll review them tonight. But Tom, if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, be careful. Family disputes can get ugly fast. That evening I drove past Vicky's house in Westwood. Not stalking, just observing. The lights were on, and I could see figures moving around inside. A BMW sat in the driveway next to Vicky's Mercedes. Both cars were leased, I'd bet. All flash, no substance. My phone buzzed with a text from Vicky. Dad, Brad's parents are so excited about the cruise. They're already planning what to pack. You're the best father anyone could ask for. The best father. Right. Danny called at 10 p.m. Tom, we have a problem. The trust document has a provision I'd forgotten about. If Vicky gets married, her spouse automatically becomes co-beneficiary with full access rights. Meaning what, exactly? Meaning Brad can withdraw money from the trust without her signature. He's been legally authorized since their wedding day. I felt that familiar knot tightening. How much has he taken? I can't access the trust account directly, but I can request a statement if you authorize me as your representative. Do it. There's something else. The cruise booking you made. I had my assistant call Princess Cruise Lines to verify the details. According to their records, someone called yesterday asking about the cancellation policy for your booking. Someone called about canceling? A woman claiming to be your daughter. She wanted to know about changing the passenger manifest and transferring the booking to different names. My daughter was planning to steal my cruise reservation just like she'd been stealing my money. But this time, they'd made a crucial mistake. They'd underestimated the man who'd built a multi-million-dollar business from nothing. Danny, I need you to prepare some documents, and I need to know everything about recording conversations in California. Tom, what are you planning? I'm planning to give my daughter exactly what she deserves, but first, I need to know just how deep this betrayal goes. What I discovered next would change everything I thought I knew about my family. Beat 5, 1080 words. Saturday morning, I met Danny at his office. Weekend meetings weren't unusual for us. Construction emergencies and legal crises don't follow business hours. But this felt different. This was personal. The trust fund statement arrived by secure email this morning, Danny said, sliding a folder across his desk. You're not going to like what you see. I opened the folder. The trust account, which should have held $420,000 plus interest, showed a current balance of $168,400. Over $250,000 had been withdrawn in the past 18 months. How is this possible? I thought the trust was protected until she turned 30. It was. But remember the marriage clause? Once she married Brad, he gained co-beneficiary status. He's been making systematic withdrawals every month since their wedding. $20,000 here, $30,000 there. Never enough to trigger automatic bank notifications, but steady enough to drain the account. And the documents showed the withdrawal pattern clearly. September 2023, $25,000 for home improvements. October, $30,000 for investment opportunities. November, $28,000 for business expenses. Business expenses. Brad didn't have a business anymore. There's more, Danny continued. I pulled the records for the 3 forged signatures on your business account. They correspond exactly with dates when Brad made large trust withdrawals. Someone was double dipping, stealing from your business account and draining Vicky's trust simultaneously. You said earlier that the handwriting analysis suggested it wasn't Brad who forged my signature. Right. The stroke patterns and pressure points indicate someone with smaller hands, more delicate motor control. Vicky. My own daughter had been forging my signature while her husband drained her trust fund. Danny, I need to understand something about California recording laws. If someone calls me and I record the conversation without telling them, is that legal? California is a two-party consent state for phone calls. Both parties need to know the call is being recorded. He paused, studying my expression. But there are exceptions. If someone is committing a crime during the call, like admitting to fraud or theft, the recording becomes evidence of criminal activity. What about wire transfers? If I wanted to cancel that cruise booking, what's the process? The person listed as primary contact can cancel up to 72 hours before departure. After that, you're looking at significant penalties. But Christmas week bookings usually have stricter policies. I thought about the timing. Today was December 21st. The cruise departed December 26th. I had exactly 5 days to gather evidence and make my decision. I need you to prepare 2 documents. First, a formal notice that I'm revoking Brad's access to Vicky's trust fund. Second, a criminal complaint for the forged signatures. Tom, are you sure about this? Once we file criminal charges, there's no going back. Family relationships ended when they decided to rob me blind. That afternoon, I drove to Best Buy and purchased a Sony ICD PX270 digital recorder. The sales clerk, a kid who couldn't have been older than 20, walked me through the features. This model has excellent pickup for phone conversations, he explained. You can connect it directly to your landline or use the external microphone for cell phones. Is the recording quality good enough for legal purposes? Oh yeah, totally. Lawyers use these all the time. Just make sure you check your state laws about consent. I also stopped by my bank, First National, and spoke with the branch manager about wire transfer procedures. Margaret Chen had been handling my business accounts for 8 years, and she knew the family situation. Mr. Mitchell, I have to tell you, we've been concerned about some of the recent activity on your accounts. The signature authorization forms your daughter submitted. They required additional verification. What kind of additional verification? We asked for photo ID and had her sign documents in the presence of a notary, but honestly, the signatures didn't look quite right. We've been planning to contact you about it. So the bank had been suspicious too. They'd just been too polite to accuse a customer's daughter of forgery. Margaret, I need to set up some specific controls on my accounts. No one except me should be able to authorize wire transfers over $10,000. And I want copies of all signature authorization forms from the past year. Of course, I'll have those documents ready by Monday. That evening, I tested the recording device, called my own voicemail, and played back the conversation. Crystal clear audio quality. If Vicky and Brad wanted to confess their crimes over the phone, I'd have every word documented. Sunday morning, I attended Mass at St. Monica's, the same church where I'd prayed for guidance when my wife was dying, where I'd thanked God for the strength to raise Vicky alone. Father Martinez delivered a sermon about forgiveness and family bonds. I listened, but my mind was elsewhere. Was I overreacting? Was there some explanation for the missing money, the forged signatures, the cruise manipulation? Then I remembered the foreclosure notice on the Pemberton family home, the pattern of Brad's previous engagements, the systematic way they'd been draining Vicky's trust fund while planning to exclude me from Christmas. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a calculated con game, and my daughter was either a willing participant or the perfect victim. After church, I drove to Vicky's house one more time. I needed to look at it with new eyes, not as the proud father who'd helped with the down payment, but as a potential crime victim gathering evidence. The house was worth about $600,000. The Mercedes in the driveway was less than a year old. The landscaping was professionally maintained. Everything looked perfect from the outside, but I knew now that it was all built on borrowed money and stolen funds. A house of cards that would collapse the moment someone stopped feeding it cash. My cash. That evening, I made my decision. Tomorrow, I would set the trap, and I'd discover once and for all whether my daughter was a victim or an accomplice. Beat 6, 1080 words. Monday morning, December 22nd. I called Vicky at 9 a.m. sharp. The recording device was connected to my landline, tested and ready. My hands were surprisingly steady as I dialed her number. Hi, Dad. I was just thinking about you. Brad's parents arrived last night, and they're so excited about the cruise. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm glad they're looking forward to it. They brought photo albums from their last Mediterranean trip. Apparently, they know all the best restaurants in Santorini and Mykonos. Of course they did. Experienced travelers always know the best spots, especially when they're spending someone else's money. Vicky, I need to ask you about something. I was at the bank on Friday, and Margaret Chen mentioned some signature authorization forms you'd submitted. There was a pause. Just half a second. But in 30 years of business negotiations, I'd learned to hear the hesitation in people's voices. Oh, those. Yeah, I needed to make some adjustments to the emergency contact information. Adding Brad as an authorized person in case something happened to you. What kind of adjustments? Just practical stuff. Making sure he could handle things if there was ever an emergency. Practical stuff. Like withdrawing money from my business accounts without my knowledge. I see. And the trust fund withdrawals? Margaret mentioned some significant transfers. Another pause. Longer this time. Dad, is there a problem? I mean, it's my money, right? The trust fund was set up for my benefit. Of course it was, honey. I just want to make sure you're being smart with it. $250,000 is a lot of money to go through in 18 months. 250? Her voice trailed off. Dad, where are you getting these numbers? From the bank statements, Victoria. Danny Rodriguez pulled them for me on Friday. The silence stretched for nearly 10 seconds. When she spoke again, her voice was different, harder. You had Danny investigate my finances? I had Danny investigate unusual activity on my accounts. Your finances became relevant when someone started forging my signature. Dad, I can explain. I'm sure you can, but first I need to understand something. Did you know about Brad's employment situation? What do you mean? I mean, did you know he was fired from Goldman Sachs 3 weeks ago? Another long pause. Then, who told you that? So you did know? Dad, it's not what you think. He was whistleblowing, exposing some corruption at the firm. They fired him for being ethical. Whistleblowing. That was a new one. I'd heard contractors blame weather, suppliers, union disputes, even solar flares for their failures, but never whistleblowing. And his parents' house being foreclosed, was that part of the whistleblowing too? Dad, what are you doing? Why are you investigating our family like we're criminals? Because someone's been treating me like an ATM while planning to exclude me from Christmas. It's more complicated than that. Explain it to me, Victoria. Help me understand how stealing from my business accounts and draining your trust fund is complicated. We needed the money, okay? Brad's family has some temporary financial difficulties, and we were just bridging the gap until things improved. By forging my signature on bank documents? It was just paperwork, Dad. You would have signed anyway if we'd asked. We just streamlined the process. Streamlined the process. 29 years of raising her, and this is what I'd taught her about integrity. And the cruise? Janet Foster from Princess Cruise Lines told me someone called asking about canceling the booking. Dad, we weren't going to cancel it. We were just exploring options. What kind of options? Look, Brad's parents have some friends who might want to join us. We were asking about changing the passenger manifest, maybe upgrading to a bigger suite. Upgrading? With whose money? Victoria, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want a direct answer. How much money have you and Brad taken from my accounts without my permission? Dad, you're being paranoid. We're family. Families help each other. How much money? I don't have exact figures. $8,350 from my business account, $250,000 from your trust fund. Should I keep going? Dad, you're scaring me. You're acting like we're strangers. Right now, I feel like we are strangers. The daughter I raised wouldn't steal from her father while planning to humiliate him in front of her in-laws. We weren't trying to humiliate you. Brad's parents they're different. They come from a different world. A different world where honesty doesn't matter? Dad, please, can we talk about this after Christmas? I promise we can work everything out. After Christmas. After the cruise I'm paying for. After you and Brad have had 2 weeks to enjoy the money you stole from me. We didn't steal anything. It's borrowing. We were going to pay it back. When? With what money? Brad doesn't have a job, your in-laws are facing foreclosure, and you've blown through your entire trust fund. Dad, you don't understand the situation. I understand perfectly. You married a con man who's been systematically draining your assets while teaching you to steal from your father. What I don't understand is why you went along with it. Brad is not a con man. Then explain Jessica Whitmore and Amanda Chen and the pattern of targeting wealthy women from prominent families. The silence that followed was different. Not hesitation or calculation. This was shock, genuine surprise. I don't know those names. For the first time in the conversation, I believed her, which meant the situation was either better or worse than I'd thought. Vicky's face when I confronted her about the forged documents would reveal everything I needed to know about my daughter's role in this scheme. Beat 7, 1170 words. I drove to Vicky's house that afternoon with a folder full of evidence and a recording device in my jacket pocket. The December sky was overcast, matching my mood perfectly. 29 years of fatherhood had led to this moment, confronting my own daughter about systematic theft. Brad answered the door. He looked different somehow, less confident, more nervous. His usual smooth demeanor seemed forced. "Tom, great to see you. Come in, come in. Victoria's in the kitchen." I followed him through the house I'd helped them buy, the hardwood floors I'd recommended, the crown molding I'd installed myself on weekends. Every improvement felt like evidence of my own foolishness now. Vicky was arranging flowers at the kitchen island, wearing the kind of casual outfit that probably cost more than most people's rent. She looked up with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Dad, what a nice surprise. Brad's parents just went out to explore the neighborhood." "Actually, I came to talk to both of you about something important." I set the folder on the kitchen counter and opened it to reveal the bank statements, trust fund documents, and handwriting analysis reports. "Brad, did you know that your employment termination from Goldman Sachs is a matter of public record?" His face went pale. "Tom, I can explain. And did you know that your family's foreclosure proceedings are also public record?" "Dad, what are you doing?" Vicky's voice was sharp now, defensive. "I'm trying to understand why my daughter and her husband have been stealing from me while planning to exclude me from Christmas." Brad stepped forward. "Now wait just a minute. Nobody's been stealing $8,350 from my business account. Forged signatures. Your name on the authorization forms." I pulled out the handwriting analysis. "Though apparently you weren't the one doing the forging." Vicky's face flushed red. "Dad, you're being ridiculous. Those were emergency authorizations. You were out of town, and we needed... I was never out of town when these withdrawals were made, and they weren't emergencies. They were systematic theft." Brad tried a different approach. "Tom, family finances can be complicated. Sometimes there are cash flow issues. Cash flow issues don't require forged signatures, Brad. They require honest conversations." I turned to Vicky. "The trust fund withdrawals. $250,000 in 18 months. What did you spend it on?" "That's my money. You set up that trust for me. I set up that trust for your future, not for Brad's gambling debts or your in-laws' foreclosure problems." "Gambling debts?" Vicky looked genuinely confused. "What gambling debts?" Brad's jaw tightened. "Tom, I think you've been listening to some bad information." "Have I? Then explain the pattern. Jessica Whitmore, Amanda Chen. 2 previous engagements to wealthy women that ended when their families discovered your financial situation." Vicky turned to stare at her husband. "Brad? Who are Jessica and Amanda?" They're nobody important. Just people from before I met you." "People you were engaged to," I added. "People whose families hired investigators when money started disappearing." "Brad?" Vicky's voice was smaller now. "Is that true?" "Victoria, your father is trying to drive a wedge between us. Can't you see that?" "I'm trying to protect my daughter from a con artist," I said. "The question is whether she's a victim or an accomplice." "Accomplice?" Vicky's voice cracked. "Dad, how can you say that?" "Because someone's been forging my signature, and the handwriting analysis says it wasn't Brad." I pulled out the signature comparison documents. Vicky's face went white as she saw her own handwriting patterns outlined in the forensic expert's report. I I can explain. Please do. Brad said, he said you'd authorized him to handle some of your financial affairs. He said the signatures were just a formality because the banks required your written approval. And you believe that? Why wouldn't I believe my husband? Brad stepped closer to Vicky. Honey, your father is obviously having some kind of breakdown. Maybe we should call someone. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't try to gaslight her now that the truth is coming out. I turned to Vicky. Your husband lost his job 3 weeks ago for unauthorized trading. His family has been broke since 2008. The foreclosure notice on their house is dated December 10th, 2 weeks ago. And you've been systematically drained of your inheritance to fund their lifestyle. That's not... Brad, tell him that's not true. Brad looked between us, calculating. Then his expression hardened. Fine. You want the truth? Your father is a controlling old man who can't stand that his little girl doesn't need him anymore. He's making up stories to get you back under his thumb. The bank records aren't stories, I said. The handwriting analysis isn't a story. Your employment termination isn't a story. Brad? Vicky's voice was barely a whisper. How long have you been unemployed? It's temporary, honey. I'm networking, making connections. How long? Since Thanksgiving. She staggered backward, gripping the kitchen counter. You've been lying to me for a month? I was protecting you from unnecessary worry. And the money, the trust fund money? Brad's mask finally slipped completely. We needed it, Victoria. My family needed it. Your family has more money than God, and mine was facing bankruptcy. It was the right thing to do. The right thing to do would have been to ask, I said, not to manipulate my daughter into forging my signature while you drained her inheritance. Your daughter made her own choices, Brad shot back. I never forced her to sign anything. Vicky was crying now, but they were tears of anger, not sadness. You told me Dad had approved everything. You said the signatures were just paperwork. I said what you needed to hear to help my family survive. And there it was, the confession. The moment when Brad's true character finally showed itself. So what happens now? Brad asked, trying to regain control. You going to destroy your daughter's marriage over some paperwork? I'm going to save her from a marriage built on fraud, I replied. But as I looked at my daughter's face, I realized the worst revelation was still coming. Because Brad's con game was bigger than just our family, and the danger to Vicky was far worse than simple financial theft. Beat 8, 720 words. That evening, I set up the recording equipment in my home office with the precision of a construction project manager. Sony ICD PEX70 connected to my landline. External microphone positioned for optimal pickup. Test recording completed and reviewed. Danny had walked me through California's recording laws one more time. Single-party consent meant I could record conversations where I was a participant, especially if crimes were being discussed. The key was letting the conversation develop naturally, allowing the subjects to incriminate themselves. At 11:30 p.m. on Christmas Eve, exactly as planned, I called Vicky's house. She answered on the second ring. Dad? Hi, sweetheart. I wanted to call before Christmas morning. Dad, about this afternoon. I need time to process everything. Brad says you're wrong about him, but some of the things you showed me. I understand this is difficult, Vicky, but I need you to know something important. I've made some decisions about the cruise. What kind of decisions? I'm canceling it. The silence stretched for nearly 15 seconds. Then, you're what? Canceling the cruise. $48,000. I called Princess Cruise Lines this evening and initiated the cancellation process. Dad, you can't do that. Brad's parents flew here specifically for this trip. Their friends are meeting us in Rome. We've planned everything. Plans change when you discover your family's been stealing from you. Dad, please. I know things look bad, but we can work this out. Brad made some mistakes, but he's not a bad person. Vicky, I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. Did you know about Jessica Whitmore and Amanda Chen before this afternoon? No, I swear I didn't know about them. Brad never mentioned other engagements. And the trust fund money. When Brad asked you to sign those withdrawal forms, what did he tell you the money was for? Investment opportunities. He said his family had connections with some exclusive investment funds that could double our money within a year. Investment opportunities. The classic con man promise. Honey, there are no investment opportunities. The money went to pay his family's debts and maintain their lifestyle. I'm starting to realize that. What are you going to do about it? Another long pause. I don't know, Dad. I really don't know. Well, I know what I'm going to do. The cruise is canceled. The trust fund is frozen. And I'm filing a police report about the forged signatures. Dad, wait. Please don't file a police report. That would destroy Brad's career permanently. His career is already destroyed, Victoria. He was fired for unauthorized trading. But if there's a criminal record, there already is a pattern of fraud. I'm just the latest victim. I could hear muffled voices in the background. Brad was there, listening to her side of the conversation. Dad, Brad wants to talk to you. The phone was passed over. Brad's voice came through tight with controlled anger. Tom, you're making a big mistake. Canceling that cruise will embarrass my parents in front of their friends. Important people. Important people who've been bankrupted for 15 years? My parents have connections you can't even imagine. Connections that could benefit your construction business if you play this smart. Is that a threat or a bribe, Brad? It's reality. You cancel this cruise, you file police reports, you'll regret it. Actually, I think you're the one who's going to regret something. But we'll find out tomorrow morning. What happens tomorrow morning? You'll see. Merry Christmas, Brad. I hung up and reviewed the recording. Clear audio, incriminating statements, threats of retaliation. Everything I needed to protect myself legally and justify my actions. But as I prepared for bed, I realized something troubling. Brad's reaction to the cruise cancellation was too extreme for someone who'd simply been caught stealing. There was desperation in his voice that went beyond embarrassment or inconvenience, which meant the cruise wasn't just a luxury vacation they'd been planning to enjoy at my expense. It was something more essential to whatever scheme they were running. Tomorrow morning, when 12 people arrived at LAX expecting a Mediterranean cruise that no longer existed, I would finally understand the full scope of what my daughter had gotten herself involved in. And I had a feeling the revelation would be worse than anything I'd discovered so far. Beat 9, 900 words. Christmas morning, 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I was already awake, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise through my kitchen window. In 3 hours, 12 people would arrive at LAX for a cruise that no longer existed. The cancellation had been processed at 11 p.m. the previous evening. One phone call to Janet Foster at Princess Cruise Lines' emergency line. My voice steady, professional. This is Tom Mitchell, primary contact for booking number PC 8847-224. I need to cancel the December 26th Mediterranean cruise. Sir, this is very short notice. Our standard cancellation policy. I understand there may be penalties. Please proceed with immediate cancellation. The total refund after penalties will be $38,400. The remaining $9,600 represents non-refundable deposits and administrative fees. Acceptable. Please process the cancellation immediately. Done, sir. Confirmation number CC 2024-225001. All passengers have been removed from the manifest. $48,300. Gone, just like that. At 6 a.m., my phone started ringing. Vicky's number. Dad, something's wrong. Brad's parents are saying there's a problem with the cruise booking. What kind of problem? They called Princess Cruise Lines to confirm their boarding passes, and the customer service person said their names aren't on the passenger list. That's correct. I canceled the cruise last night. You actually canceled it? Dad, I thought you were trying to scare us. I don't make empty threats, Victoria. But Brad's parents' friends are flying in from Boston this morning. They're all meeting at the airport at 9. Then they're going to be very disappointed. I could hear chaos in the background. Multiple voices, elevated stress levels, phones ringing. Dad, you have to fix this. Brad's parents are furious. They're talking about suing you. For what? Canceling a vacation I was paying for? For causing them public embarrassment. Their friends already think they're having financial problems, And now everyone will know they're having financial problems. Problem solved. Dad, this isn't funny. You're absolutely right. It's not funny at all. At 8:30 a.m., Danny Rodriguez called. Tom, I just got a very interesting call from someone named Pemberton. Apparently Brad's father wants to discuss a business proposition with you. What kind of business proposition? Something about investment opportunities in exchange for reinstating the cruise. He claims his family has connections with some very profitable ventures. Did you tell him the cruise is non-refundable at this point? I told him to put any business propositions in writing and submit them through proper legal channels. What did he say to that? He hung up. At 9:15 a.m., Vicky called again. This time she was at the airport. Dad, it's chaos here. 12 people showed up expecting to board a cruise ship. The Princess Cruise Line's desk says the booking was canceled, and they can't reinstate it because the ship is fully booked. That's unfortunate. Brad's parents they're completely humiliated. Their friends are asking questions about who was supposed to pay for this trip. And what are they telling their friends? They're telling people that you had some kind of mental breakdown and canceled everything out of spite. Interesting theory. Dad, isn't there anything you can do? Some way to fix this? Victoria, let me ask you something. Do you know why this cruise was so important to Brad's parents? What do you mean? I mean, why were they so desperate to take this specific trip with their friends? I don't understand. Think about it. They're facing foreclosure. They're broke. But they invited friends to join them on a luxury cruise they couldn't afford. Why would they do that unless... I let the question hang there, waiting for her to connect the dots. Unless what, Dad? Unless they were planning to use those friends for something, maybe another investment opportunity, maybe another con game. That's ridiculous. They're not con artists. Then why is Brad's father offering me investment opportunities in exchange for reinstating the cruise? Silence on the other end of the line. Vicky, are you still there? Dad, what if you're right? What if Brad's family... What if they were using me to get to your money? What if? And what if Brad... What if he's done this before with other families? You mean Jessica Whitmore and Amanda Chen? Yeah. What if I'm not his wife? What if I'm just his latest mark? It was painful to hear the realization dawning in her voice, but necessary. Victoria, I need to tell you something else. Something I discovered yesterday that I haven't shared yet. What? Janet Foster, the cruise director I've been working with, she did some research on Brad after I mentioned his name. Apparently, he's tried to book similar family cruises with 2 other cruise lines in the past year. Both times, the bookings were paid for by women from wealthy families. Both times, the cruises were canceled at the last minute when the women's families discovered the fraud. The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. Dad? Yes, sweetheart. I think I need help. And then she said the words I'd been waiting to hear for months. I think you were right about everything. Beat 10, 6:30 words. That afternoon, Vicky came to my house alone. She looked smaller somehow, like the expensive clothes and perfect makeup couldn't hide the fact that her world had collapsed in a single morning. Brad doesn't know I'm here, she said, settling into the kitchen chair where she used to do homework as a teenager. He thinks I'm at the spa with his mother. How are his parents handling the airport situation? They're furious. Not just at you, at Brad. Apparently their friends were asking some very pointed questions about who was supposed to pay for the cruise. And when Brad had to admit it was my father, their friends started asking other questions. About our finances, about how we can afford our lifestyle when Brad just lost his job. I poured coffee for both of us, the same mugs we'd used when she was 16 and dealing with high school drama. Some things never change, even when everything else falls apart. Dad, I need to tell you something about the trust fund money. I'm listening. It wasn't just Brad who was taking it. I mean, he was, but I helped. I signed the withdrawal forms willingly. Why? Because he convinced me we were helping his family through a temporary crisis. He said his father had some medical bills that insurance wouldn't cover, and his mother was too proud to ask for help directly. Medical bills? Heart surgery, supposedly. Brad showed me hospital invoices and everything. Did you ever verify those invoices? She shook her head. I trusted him. He's my husband. You're supposed to trust your husband. Yes, you are, but trust has to be earned and it has to be based on truth. I was so stupid, Dad. You weren't stupid. You were manipulated by an expert. But I should have asked questions. I should have talked to you about the money, instead of just taking it. Yes, you should have. You should have. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Outside, the December wind was blowing through the oak trees I'd planted when she was 12. Some of them were bare now, others still clinging to their leaves. Dad, there's something else. Janet Foster called me this morning. The cruise director? Yeah. She said she's been investigating Brad for the past 6 months. Apparently, he's been using a variation of the same scam with multiple cruise lines. What kind of variation? He targets women from wealthy families, gets them to book expensive family vacations, then cancels the cruises at the last minute and pockets the cancellation refunds. How many times has he done this? 4 times that she knows of. Jessica Whitmore lost $80,000 on a canceled European river cruise. Amanda Chen lost $60,000 on a canceled Caribbean family reunion. The scope of Brad's operation was bigger than I'd imagined. This wasn't opportunistic theft. It was systematic fraud with multiple victims. Vicky, I need you to understand something. This isn't your fault. Professional con artists are good at what they do because they study human psychology. They know how to identify people's weaknesses and exploit them. What was my weakness? You wanted to help. You wanted to be a good wife, a good daughter-in-law. Those are admirable qualities that got twisted by someone without conscience. So what happens now? Now you have choices to make about your marriage, about your future, about whether you're going to let this experience destroy you or teach you. I think I want an annulment. Are you sure? Dad, I married a stranger. Everything Brad told me about himself, about his family, about his plans for our future, it was all lies. Then we'll call Danny first thing tomorrow morning and start the legal process. But even as I said it, I knew the hardest part was still coming, because Brad wasn't the type of man who would let his latest mark simply walk away. Beat 11, 450 words. 6 months later, I was sitting on the porch of my cabin in Taos, New Mexico, watching the sunrise paint the Sangre de Cristo Mountains gold and orange. The elevation was 7,000 feet, the air was thin and clean, and my nearest neighbor was 3 miles away. Perfect. Mitchell Construction was now being run by my former partner, Jake Morrison. I'd sold him my shares for fair market value and retired at 61 with enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life. The cabin was modest. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a wood-burning stove. But it was mine, free and clear. No mortgages, no business pressures, no family drama. Vicky's annulment had been finalized in March. Brad had contested it initially, claiming emotional distress and demanding alimony, but Danny Rodriguez had presented such a comprehensive case of fraud that Brad's lawyer advised him to accept the dissolution quietly. The criminal charges for forged signatures had been dropped in exchange for Brad's agreement to leave California and never contact Vicky again. Last I heard, he was in Florida, probably running the same con on some other wealthy family with a trusting daughter. The trust fund had been restructured with new protections and safeguards. Vicky would have access to her inheritance when she turned 30, but only through a financial advisor who'd been specifically instructed to watch for signs of manipulation or coercion. She was living in a smaller apartment now, working as a marketing coordinator for a nonprofit organization. Real work, honest work. She seemed happier, though I could still see the wounded look in her eyes sometimes. We talked once a month, usually by text, brief conversations about her job, my cabin renovations, the weather, nothing deep or emotional. We were both still healing. This morning's text had arrived at sunrise. Dad, I started therapy last week, learning about manipulation tactics and how to rebuild trust. Thought you should know. I'd responded, proud of you. Healing takes time. and that was enough for now. I'd learned something important these past 6 months. Generosity without boundaries isn't kindness, it's enabling. Love without limits isn't unconditional, it's self destructive. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to be used. The cabin was quiet, except for the wind in the pines and the occasional call of a hawk circling overhead. No phones ringing with family emergencies, no crises requiring immediate financial solutions, no one expecting me to fix their problems or fund their lifestyles. Just peace. If this story resonates with you, maybe you've been too generous with people who didn't deserve it. Maybe you've learned the hard way that family loyalty should flow both directions. Subscribe and share your thoughts about setting boundaries with people you love. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is teaching them the consequences of their choices, even when that someone is your own child.